Mahendra Life Space Developers, Mumbai, and Dr. Rana sir. He is our earlier chairperson for Agrobiodiversity Committee. Welcome you, sir. Before I invite Dr. Mathur sir for his opening remarks, I would like to give you a brief about the importance of organizing this consultative meeting. As everyone aware, India is a signatory to the Convention on Biological Diversity. Nearly 196 countries are parties to this convention, and in 2010, the CBD has adopted the Global Strategic Action Plan for Biodiversity 2011 to 2020. It's called ACHI Biodiversity Target. The framework was developed in Nagoya, Japan. Further, India has developed its national target under the guidance of Dr. Mathur when he was working as a director, Indian Institute of Science, Wildlife Institute of India. The ACHI target are coming to an end by 2020, and the new set of post-2020 targets under discussion. The CBD is asking countries to mainstream biodiversity into the primary sectors such as agriculture, fisheries, forestry, and bio-based industrial sectors to achieve zero biodiversity loss. That is the main agenda of the CBD. In this context, NBA and MSSRF are organizing this consultative meeting to discuss on two important issues. The first one is how to conserve and protect the agrobiodiversity resources, mainly the plant genetic resources and the animal genetic resources, and how the corporate sector can play an important role in conserving the biodiversity using the CSR funds. The recently published Biofin document says that India needs around 26 crores per year for achieving the national targets. The corporate sector contribution is around 500 crores per year. Still, corporate sector can play a major role in meeting and conserving India's biodiversity. And with this, I kindly request Dr. Mathur sir to give his opening remarks. And I'd like to say a few words about Dr. Mathur sir. Dr. Mathur sir is currently the chairperson of the National Biodiversity Authority. Before joining the NBA, he served as the director of the Wildlife Institute of India between 2014 and 2019. Dr. Mathur sir has been spearheading India's initiative towards mainstreaming biodiversity into key development sectors. He is currently serving as the member of the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, CBD, an intergovernmental science policy platform on biodiversity ecosystem services, IPBES. Most importantly, Dr. Mathur has contributed immensely for the preparation of 5th and 6th National Report for India to the CBD and the preparation of National Biodiversity Action Plan 2014. During that time, I was closely working with Dr. Mathur. Over to Dr. Mathur, sir, for his opening remarks.
Dr. Murli, Dr. Ajay Parida, Dr. Krishna Kumar, Dr. Sudha Mysore, Dr. Sunil, Dr. Sunita, Dr. Anil Kumar, Dr. Thompson, Dr. Rana, and ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the National Biodiversity Authority and on my own behalf, it's my very pleasant duty to welcome you all to this National Consultative Webinar. Interestingly, and I'm very pleased to say that this is the first formal engagement between the MSSRF and NBA, although both are located in Chennai. And it was only yesterday that I was able to talk to Dr. Murli, and we talked about the engagement today. But I can assure you that we are going to have many such discussions in near future. Now, interestingly, the importance of agriculture in Indian economy cannot be overemphasized. And I would like to go back to my school days, 50 years ago, when I recall my geography class, where we were told that India has an agriculture-based economy. So see, these words are not new to us. Right from the beginning, we have been hearing. Although in absolute term, the agriculture GDP is growing, but as a ratio of the total GDP of the economy, we do feel that it is actually declining. And that is sometimes a cause of worry. Similarly, notwithstanding the percentage of people dependent on agriculture has, according to recent statistics, have declined to about 48% from being as high as 85% in 1951. It seems that a very large number of people are dependent, and rightly so, on agriculture for their livelihoods. And in the context of the present COVID crisis, if anything which has stood for India is its ability to meet the food requirements of its masses of population and the migrant population, which have been put into great stress. Now, this sector undoubtedly influences the lives of entire population, and several efforts have been made to evolve appropriate agriculture policies which affect both the producers and the consumers. Given the food deficiency that has prevailed and the continued growth of human population since independence, our strategy has been largely production centric. The sector has received incentives that has helped the nation to achieve high levels of production for ensuring food security. Now, the kind of agriculture policies that we deal with have both positive and negative impacts were actually framed in the mid-60s. These measures adopted production subsidies, minimal support prices, public procurement, storage, distribution of food grains, and some amount of trade protection. And we are aware that during the 60s and 70s, we did a widespread adoption of the high-yielding rice and wheat varieties, and that was needed to meet India's food deficit situation. But over the years, the country has expanded its irrigated area. It has promoted the use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides, and has also improved access to institutional credit. Now, substantial increase have taken place in the consumption of high value food commodities, and we now need to look at how do we take an overall picture. And as Dr. Thompson just mentioned, that India has been a party to the CBD since its inception in 1992, and we have an obligation to integrate the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity into relevant sectoral and cross-sectoral plans, programs, and policy. And that is perhaps what brings us together. Agriculture is and will remain a major sector, impacting food, nutrition, livelihood, and overall economic security of the communities. And it is very important for us, therefore, to talk about mainstreaming biodiversity in agriculture sector. It is also crucial for us to reduce the depletion of biodiversity in the agriculture landscapes. Because if that happens, then we are making our small and medium landholding and farm communities much, much more vulnerable. So the main purpose of this consultation, as will be known by the interventions by my fellow speakers, is to foster partnership. And we have these players in mind, the public players, the private players, the primary and production sectors, and what is called as the 4C continuum. C for conservation, C for cultivation, C for consumption, and commercial dimensions of the biodiversity. That needs to be looked into as an integrated approach as we talk of a national biodiversity and agriculture management framework. Now, we do understand that there has been start of the talk of mainstreaming of biodiversity in production sectors, but very often it is still, if I can say so, a business as usual. But we need to change that. We cannot continue to have that. We need to ensure that there is no erosion of biodiversity in the agriculture landscapes, and our farmers are not vulnerable to the hits that they can feel by messing up with the environment. The effective use of biodiversity and ecosystem services becomes very urgent, and we need to ensure that we are better prepared for any adverse impact that the climate may have. Finally, I would say that if you look at the global level, the entire dialogue is now focusing on the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. It is under discussion both globally and nationally. And the reason for doing this is, and let us admit it, that in 2010, we promised to the world that we should be able to stem the loss of biodiversity by 2020. And now that 2020 has come, we have actually not been able to achieve that. But not delving on the negativities, I would still keep a positive frame. And I'm very sure that altogether, we should be able to work on a new framework. And I'm confident that the deliberations that we are going to have and the inputs that we are going to have from a galaxy of eminent experts will lay a very solid foundation for building further synergies between various sectors. And especially, we are looking at the agri-business sector. And it is very heartening to note that we have a very broad-based agenda today. And I'm very sure that the resource persons and the participants who are part of this consultation will be contributing tremendously to our knowledge and to our way ahead. So with these words, I welcome you once again. And I would like to thank MSSRF, in particular, the director, for agreeing that we should start this relationship by hosting this webinar today. And I'm very hopeful that we will continue to strengthen this relationship in days to come. So thank you very much for providing this opportunity. And I will give it back to Dr. Thompson to continue with the rest of the proceedings. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I'm audible, sir?
Yeah, audible.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I kindly request Dr. Murli, Executive Director, MS Swaminathan Foundation, to provide his remarks. Dr. K.S. Murli has 3 decades of experience working for international, government, and academic institutions in the area of forest, agriculture, water, climate change adaptation, and human development. He worked for the International Development Research Center, IDRC, the United Nations Development Program, the Energy and Research Institute, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and French Institute at Pondicherry, and he has traveled extensively to all the Asian countries and African countries. Over to Dr. Murli.
Thank you, Thompson, for the nice introduction. And Dr. Mathur, of course, we had a long association with Dr. Mathur when he was in WII. It's nice that I recently joined in last month, and I'm still trying to catch up with lots of activities that the institution, our foundation, is embarking upon various issues. So it's a quick one, and I thought we will do it quickly, and maybe we will take it up soon with the National Biodiversity Authority, and perhaps make it much more unique in the next time to wherever it happens. So first of all, from our institution, the MS Swaminathan Research Foundation, I welcome all of you, and it is very hard welcome, and it's my first webinar here. Of course, recently we had our annual day function, which again we discussed on agrobiodiversity, and I'll perhaps at the end I will summarize the discussion that we had, because that was again internationally renowned scientists attended there, and perhaps that also will be useful for this discussion, which I will do. What I would do today is primarily I'll talk about 4 disjoint anecdotes from various times in my career, and then perhaps summarize at the end of it, so that it pertains to what we are discussing it today. And of course, I was also with UNDP, directly working with CVD, and a couple of reports also I had submitted along with the Government of India. So there is some kind of a, sorry, there is some technical issue. I hope I'm audible to you now. So there is some understanding of how CBD works, and also how this will also impact our lives and our people in our countries. So in this context, I want to go back as Dr. Mathur did. When I was a student in Agriculture University, our teachers used to tell us why the wild relatives of the croplands are very, very important. And every July or August, our professors used to go back to some places such as Koraput and Jharkhand and other places to get to get to look for certain germplasms, particularly of millets, and come back with lots of happy feeling that they got so many germplasm this time, etc., etc. I never used to understand what this all about. They go there and get some seeds and come back. Now I understand after several years of experience what they used to do. And in fact, in the same breath, I would also say that in our agriculture college in Bangalore, the millet scheme had about 3,000 ragi land races alone, which we used to grow in an isolated conditions every 3 years or 4 years, depending on the lifespan of that seed, and used to keep it. I don't know why I used to do that, but I now understand what is the importance of those issues now. So these are all something which, as scientists and as researchers, we did it knowingly or unknowingly, and nowadays it's becoming very, very important, and we now understand why these are quite high. Although it is, I'm talking about 40 years ago, we did all these things, and agriculture universities have deposited or maintained these kind of races for a very, very long time, not necessarily 30 years, perhaps 50, 60 years. And I also want to go to another, again, my own anecdotes. When I was a student in my village, how we used to, soon after our studies or soon after our schools, we used to go and started doing something in our own farms. We used to grow nearly 3 to 5 crops in a same piece of land in the same season. And that over a period of time started deteriorating, in the sense we used to either grow only one crop or at the maximum 2 crops in the same season, in the same piece of land. And that, I realize these days it's quite a compelling reason why we are getting more and more diseases and pests and so on. So, and I am reminded of one thought Gandhi said, Gram Swaraj, because 60, 70 years ago, when people used to grow several crops in the same piece of land, a family used to grow whatever that they can within that the family wants to grow within a year, or what are the requirements, so that they will not go hunger, they'll not grow hungry in a year, so that they will sustain their life over the period of 1 year. And this is the family food security that they thought of. Similarly, if you look at one village or one gram panchayat, the idea is that they grow everything that is self-sustaining, and that became the idea of Gram Swaraj, if I may say that it is the idea of India, idea of what Gandhi thought is Gram Swaraj. And perhaps we have to get that idea back into our villages, where we try to grow as much as possible within that small piece of land and within that area limits of the village, so that we become self-sufficient in all the, we are talking about food and nutrition, food security, nutrition security, so on and so forth. But we somehow miss the point that our father of our nation said, the Gram Swaraj, that we have to be self-sufficient. It is at the home, I mean, the charity begins at home, we say. Unless we start doing these things at home, it becomes extremely difficult to preach or even teach food security to the entire nation. So that is one concept I thought is very, very relevant even today. And the third point I wanted to, again, it's in the recent past when I was working in the Nagaland. Nagaland, it's Sweden agriculture, or what you call as shifting agriculture, where some people also in Orissa call it Spodo agriculture. That is true of Karnataka as well. They will cut whatever the small, trees, small trees, not the big trees, and they cultivate there. A family of say 50 or 60 cultivate around 100 acres of land, and to my surprise, they cultivate anywhere between 60 to 70 types of crops. And I find nearly 32 crops of paddy alone in that small piece of 100 acres of land. So which means they find those 32 types of rice for the entire year they want it. And similarly, there are 15, 20 different types of greens, 15 different 20 types of pulses they need over the entire year. So that is the kind of requirement which is required for nutritional security. So if you look at the nutritional security or the health of most of the hilly regions, anywhere you go in India, be tribal population of many countries, they're less likely to have health issues, nutritional issues. This is what we find across India. There could be exceptions, but by and large, this is true of tribal belts of India. So which means they are very nutritionally secure, and I think we have to learn from those models of nutritional security and also food security. This is my third anecdote that I wanted to say. And the fourth, which also talks about how business models should be brought into this, is that when I was looking at the models of sustainable harvest in some of the in some of the plants, particularly non-timber forest products, it's an entire extreme that I find that even some plants or some products used to, even if you harvest 10% of their products, they used to get very severe regenerative impacts on regeneration, whereas some, even if you harvest at 70 to 80%. So this is the kind of experimentation that we have to do if we have to make business plans for any particular species that we want to have. And in fact, if we have to run a business through this, I think we have, if Oliver is there attending this, he can explain to you better than I, where he has run an FPO which is now into, which is, I think the turnover is more than 1 crore now. I think it's one of the best FPOs, that is farmer producer companies that we have demonstrated. I think those kind of FPOs that we need to come up, where they're again small farmers, marginal farmers, but yet they have cooperatively done some of these things. So my crux of the point that I'm trying to tell is that we have to bring back several, I would say, lost cultures and lost species, and also lost various traits or varieties that we earlier grew as part of our agriculture, and only then we will be able to do some of these things. In my opinion, that should happen, and this also boosts a lot of our agrobiodiversity, and also it also improves our dietary diversity. I think one of the issues to mainstream agrobiodiversity is to improve or increase dietary diversity. That's the first point that I want to argue, and I just want to say a couple of points which I have noted from the recently concluded agrobiodiversity issues. One is about indispensable need for conserving local land races. I think this is the point that we stressed very. Seed is one of the core for food production, and hence sustainable food production demands strengthening of seed systems. So this is one thing which came very hard in our discussions in our 2 weeks ago seminar that we did across the various countries, and empower farmers to cope with climate change through judicious use of biodiversity in agriculture. This is another point primarily the Biodiversity International has been stressing upon. The other point is about the applying gender lens in policies related to biodiversity conservation. And one more point that they wanted to stress upon is integrating agrobiodiversity in smart way to address food and nutrition security. So these are some of the points. One, I think food as the mass personalization of nutrition, which is very, very critical if we have to improve diet. Because see, it is important to have nutrition of an individual, what is good for an individual, and therefore the nutrition of an individual becomes important, and that is how you can increase diversity of the dietary diversity of masses across, and therefore you can increase agrobiodiversity through mainstreaming the that's how you can increase the or improve or mainstream biodiversity or agrobiodiversity is my argument. Thank you very much for all this, and thanks for all the people who came at the last minute. Unfortunately, we had very little time to invite you, and thanks very much for all of you to have attended this meeting. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for your nice remarks, sir. Now let us move on to the technical session. I'm very happy to introduce Dr. Ajay Parida, currently Director for the Institute of Life Sciences, Department of Biotechnology, Odisha. He's going to speak on mainstreaming biodiversity into the agriculture sector. Already Dr. Ajay Parida has, with his guidance, National Biodiversity Authority has developed a policy document on mainstreaming biodiversity into agriculture sector. We had this consultative meeting during 2017, and Dr. Ramesh Chand from the Nitya Yoga was a chair for that meeting. We had a very good discussion with ICR intellectuals, and it's very nice that we have come out with a very good recommendation for mainstreaming biodiversity into the agriculture sector. Dr. Ajay Parida is a recipient of prestigious Padma Shri from the Government of India. He has contributed significantly in identifying stress-tolerant genes from mangroves and Prosopis julifera and developed climate-resilient crop varieties. He has received several national and international awards for his outstanding contribution in the field of agricultural biotechnology. Over to Dr. Ajay Parida.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think thank you, Thompson, for the. Am I audible now? Is it audible?
Yes,
you are.
audible.
And the slide
Everybody
is,
muted their mic. It is audible.
the slides are also visible.
Yeah, visible. Screen is
Okay.
visible.
So, good afternoon. Thank you, Thompson, for that nice introduction. Dr. Mathur, Dr. Murli, my friend Anil, Dr. Rana, and so many friends. I have seen them in the participant list. I will not able to go one by one, but I think this seminar reminds me of my old association with MS Swaminathan Research Foundation as well as the Biodiversity Authority. So both after both NBA chairman Dr. Mathur has taken over and also Murli has taken over, I have not met them personally. So I wish you all the best. I hope that you both will take your organizations to a greater height. I think if I look back, the very inception of Biodiversity Authority was there from Swaminathan Foundation when I was there, working there. And almost every previous chairman of the Biodiversity Authority, I had magnificent and super relationship, starting with Dr. Kannayan to Dr. Meena Kumari, each one of them. And also this particular study, which Thompson referred to, was conducted when I was still associated with Dr. Swaminathan Foundation. And after that, when in Swaminathan Foundation, always we talk about biodiversity, livelihood, and all these things. So now I have come to an organization which deal with more towards basic science research and life science, including cancer biology, infectious disease, and so many so forth. And with our current engagement with COVID research, whether it is diagnostic or research or even testing. So we are contributing towards a great deal for societal development as the needs of the society. I think if you really look in terms of that, what is the need of the society, the biodiversity comes as the first, first founding step for which contributes so I don't have to undermine the role of biodiversity in day-to-day life or improving the food, livelihood, agriculture, nutrition, security of all the places. So if you really look at, I think that this is what Thompson has asked me to speak on the policy paper which you prepared. But I think even when we started looking at the policy paper when we were developing, we thought that these three words, food, nutrition, and livelihood security, should be the crux of the report which we are going to prepare. So the context is very simple. I think we are confronted with several trends at the global level, which is pushing the agricultural technology or our dependence on agriculture to a great extent. We will have to leave, the thing is that 66% of the people who live in cities, I think that is going to be the transition. And that would require, I think we will be requiring about 3 billion more mouths to feed by 2050. And this will require about 50% increase in the food demand by 2020. And this has to be maintained with roughly about 30% drop in agricultural workers because there is a migration from the agriculture sector to other sector, both in developed countries as well as developing countries. So the challenges are enormous. The farming as a practice is already in endangered situation. But as I think Dr. Mathur and Murli mentioned about it, agriculture is lifeline of the Indian economy. It represents the largest sector that provides more than 60% of the job, and it enhances the living standard of that 70% of the India's population are dependent on agriculture, and it is contributing to something about 20% of the GDP. Of course, this contribution to the GDP has been declining over the last few years. At the same time, as I mentioned, that with the growing population, I think 70% of the food has to be grown. And also our consumption pattern will change drastically. I think, for example, the food and meat consumption will go from 36 kilo to about 45 kilo by end of 2030. And why this is important, that because for producing 1 kilogram of meat or food, processed food and meat product, the amount of water and agriculture inputs required is quite high. So even that, what you're talking about, 70% more food, if you take into account what are the requirement from the other sector, that will also substantially increase. And India is in a real challenging stage. I mean, we have 4% of water available from the global scale. We have 2.4% of land available in the worldwide, but we have to support with 4% water, 2.4% of the land. We have to support 17% of global population. And this challenge, there are stress on supply side where the soil fatigue is there, groundwater depletion, plateauing yield factors, climate change, post-harvest losses are what is the supply side thing. And then the demand side, the economic growth is taking place, which results in more purchasing power and also the consumption shift. But unfortunately, what is happening is that in the coming days, 15% of the GDP will be supporting 48% of the population. So these are the challenges and which we are confronted with. And in all these things, biodiversity is or has played a crucial role in addressing the food systems, nutrition pattern, and to overall sustainable growth. Agricultural development has been the hallmark of India's development history. Like all of you know that in 1950s, our total food grain production was to about 50 million metric ton. But In 2017-18, we have gone up to about 219, 220 million metric tons. So that has been tremendous. I don't want to go into the details like how it was achieved or the technology, as Dr. Swaminathan always says, that it is the technology, policy, and the farmers' enthusiasm which has resulted in achieving what you call as we have the self-sustainability in the production. So this slide, I think all of you might have seen that we are talking about a strategic plan for biodiversity in 2011 to 2020, where the vision has been until by 2050, biodiversity is valued, conserved, restored, and essentially with a strategic goal for developing some framework where we achieve what we call sustainable biodiversity action plan for this. So with this background, I think NBA has Dr. Meena Kumari was the former chairperson, and Thompson and myself, we discussed about it. And we come out with this policy brief on mainstreaming biodiversity in the agriculture sector for increasing India's food, nutrition, livelihood security. And this policy brief was released, as Thompson mentioned, by Mr. Ramesh Chand, who is the member of the Planning Commission or Niti Aayog. And I'm also happy to mention that this particular outcome has been now published and been accepted for publication in current science. In this issue, I think it is a accepted paper. In the coming issue, this policy brief is going to come out with this. So when you talk about mainstreaming biodiversity, it is the process of embedding biodiversity considerations into policies, strategies, and practices of key public, private sector that impacts or rely on biodiversity so that it is conserved and sustainably used for both locally and globally. So it talks about policies, strategies, and practices, and also talks about all stakeholders, be it public or private or even the farmers, taking all of them into account, into consideration. So approaches of mainstreaming biodiversity, there are three pillars. One is encouraging ecologically intensified agricultural farming system, which gives lesser stress to the agricultural production system, maintain biodiversity in the production landscape, and sustainable consumption, reduce food waste, and also a sustainable diet. I think biodiversity is crucial in all the factors. The National Biodiversity Action Plan targets, which is related to agriculture sector, is mentioned in Target 5, that is sustainable management of agriculture, and Target 7, where by 2020, genetic diversity of cultivated plants, livestock, and wild animals the strategies are developed for this particular purpose. Not only that, in Convention on Biological Diversity Strategic Plan and IG biodiversity targets, if you look at the Target 7, that is sustainable management of the production system, Target 13, maintenance of genetic diversity of crops, and also in UN Sustainable Development Goal, Goal 2, which has zero hunger, 12, the responsible consumption and production, and Goal 15, life on land. If you really look into all these sustainable development goal target or achieve biodiversity target, biodiversity plays a crucial role in addressing major issues. So if you really look at it, how do you mainstream the biodiversity concerns into your development agenda, or specifically if you look into food, agriculture, and nutrition agenda? So I think there are four pillars where one, what we require is developing and documenting the knowledge. We must analyze what we have and what we need with them. Then integration of biodiversity, food, and nutrition issues into research and policy instrument, that is the second priority area. Conserving and promoting wider use of biodiversity for food, agriculture, and nutrition, that is the third pillar of this. And finally, involving public or making people aware about these initiatives is very crucial. So if you look at that, if you look at the pathway, I think for the knowledge and production, what we require is the base of biodiversity, or the evidence base we have to collect for the biodiversity, and look at, couple them with the dietary diversity as well as food preference. We also need enabling environment where we need leadership as well as empowerment across the stakeholder groups. Then we need to integrate various ongoing programs, whether it is under nutrition, health, agriculture, hunger and poverty reduction. Of course, conservation plays a major role in this because we're much dependent on the conservation of these resources because these will form the feedstock for future development. Then, of course, education and awareness raising is very crucial, whether it is in terms of IEC-based education system or empowerment system. And finally, we need to evaluate all the actions which you take. How does it reflect in improvement or improvement in the bioresources or biodiversity resources? So these specific suggestions which you have come out with this policy paper, if you really go through, I'll go through quickly. I think all of you are aware of what are the things. I don't have to just reiterate it. Maintaining and enhancing crop diversity to support more diversified diets. That is the major recommendation that essentially to improve assessment of the crop diversity in the region. Then protect the protected areas as well as the agricultural important heritage sites and the biodiversity hotspots, which are the future stock for product development or even the biotechnology industry. We need to also a seed sector policy framework that support indigenous crop varieties. And this is like, for example, the initiative at Swaminathan Research Foundation for community seed level banks or village seed fairs, which I think my colleagues Anil and other people are doing on a regular basis. Also the protecting the ecosystem where community-based natural management system to strengthen local food systems and empower indigenous people need to be given priority. We also suggested for design food system the nutrition sensitive, which are nutrition sensitive, and place a value on biodiversity because most of the what you call the people who are residing in the tribal areas or different pockets, they depend on the local food system for their food, livelihood, and nutrition security, and that need to be given adequate priority. Enhancing pest, disease, and weed control and integrated pest management would also require crucial attention, whether it is integrated pest management or vector management, and also looking into the natural control measures from the agrobiodiversity-based things, which can also help. Improving soil health management. I think all our soil is deteriorating, and specifically in the time of what you call the climate change and all these things. So specific attention are required also to improve soil health management. Then we're also we talked about also enhancing sustainable production and consumption system, where the genetic diversity or the staple foods of the local communities need to be given priority, and also health promoting measure to strengthen community resilience, livelihood, and well-being is very crucial. Making healthy local food accessible and desirable is another factor which we mentioned. Then we also suggested giving emphasis on the healthy, sustainable, and equitable food value chain. I think in the context of what the Prime Minister has been talking about, say, Atmanirbhar Bharat or be vocal for the local products, I think this comes in that the local production and local distribution network need to be strengthened in the coming days. Alien invasive species has also been another crucial factor which we have. So the management of this alien invasive species, which is a threat to major agricultural ecosystem, has also been brought out by us as one of the major factors. Although we cannot ignore the local breeds, so in addition to the local food crops or the agricultural crops, we also said that conservation of the local breeds or local resources need to be also given priority. So these are some of the recommendations which we have brought out in this. But just to, in the next few slides, not next 2 or 3 slides, I'll try to say that although what we're talking about agriculture, food, and food, or sustaining the agriculture production using agrobiodiversity, but I think one of the factors which is very crucial which is now drawing critical attention of the worldwide, is how to link the agriculture with nutrition. While approximately 821 million people are undernourished, and what we have been talking about, that agriculture or agrobiodiversity conservation of the agrobiodiversity resources can play a major role in addressing the nutritional issue. Nutrition, I think these figures may scare all of us. 1.9 billion adults of 18 years and older are overweight, out of which 600 million, more than 600 million are obese. 41 million children are overweight, while 52 million children are wasted, and 155 million children are stunted. So in addition to whatever the other intervention, I think agriculture diversity plays a major role in addressing both agriculture, food, and nutrition challenges. So this is a complicated figure, but I think this is much more. I think that's what, as I said, that we require evidence and knowledge, because the biodiversity, these are the crucial factors, or these are the nexus between biodiversity loss, socioeconomic determinants, climate change, and the nutrition and this thing. But for that, we require evidence and knowledge, where stakeholder identification and consultation is required, establish a baseline, identify the research gap, and identify the capacity gap, and then finally identify the mainstream interventions. At the same time, we require a lot of enabling environment, where a lot of policies and other things are required, and implementation of integrated biodiversity, nutrition, and health interventions. Of course, as I mentioned, awareness and public awareness and education will play a main role, and monitoring also. This is not a stepwise process, but it has to be in a adaptive management strategy or a management framework. So that is what I think many of the people are now talking about, a sustainability index. Sustainability index means that we have to make an effort for combining every ability, whether it is environmental concern or economic concern or food or nutrition concern. These has to be seen in totality rather than in isolation. And these factors are many, challenges are many. I think telling that conserving biodiversity and mainstreaming is easy, but as Dr. Swaminathan always says, that conservation without resources is only conversation. And I think that too should take it. I think it is a broad-based action plan for each one of us, who, since we're all connected, and we have to treat agrobiodiversity as a family, and we need to protect our family and mainstream biodiversity at the earliest. I think that is what my message would be. The details, I didn't go to the details of the recommendation, because as I said, the publication is coming up in the next volume of the current science. And I must thank all of you for patient hearing. Maybe at any time I could take any clarifications or questions. Thank you very much.
So thank you.
So thank you, sir, for elaborating the work NBA has carried out under your guidance. And the publication is also available in NBA's website. It was recently uploaded, and it was also available in ResearchGate for others to read that document. This is the first document we have developed for India on this mainstreaming biodiversity into agricultural sector. One important recommendation, we were suggesting the ecologically intensified agricultural farming practices. Everybody knows that currently we are pumping all chemical into this agricultural system. So we have recommended for ecologically intensified agricultural farming practices. Now I kindly request Dr. Anil Kumar, the Senior Director, to introduce the speakers, please.
Thank you, Thompson. In fact, we are running behind the scheduled time. Dr. Ajay, you have taken a little bit more time. So my first request is to the speakers, the next speakers, to be very precise, and maybe you can take not more than 7 to 10 minutes. If we can flash your major points, it will be good. So we have now the next speaker is Dr. Krishna Kumar. he is going to speak on fostering business opportunities in biodiverse agricultural sectors. He is a very familiar figure in the field of agrobiodiversity conservation in the country. He was a former regional representative of biodiversity in South and Central Asia. Also worked as the Deputy Director General Horticulture Indian Council of and contributed to the conservation of agro. Sir, over to you, Dr. Krishna Kumar.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Kindly somebody, if they can, see, you can see I've given 7 minutes. Should I run through the slides or should I speak extempore?
I think you can extempore because unless you want to show your slides.
I can speak extempore because
because you are good.
Slides will take more time.
Yeah.
See, we are all respected chairman of the. Yes, please. Can I go ahead?
Yeah, please.
Respected chairman of the National Biodiversity Authority, Dr. Mathur, Dr. Anil, Dr. Chandish, Dr. Sunil Archak, Dr. Sudha Mysore, Dr. Ajay, and all the Anil Kumar and many other colleagues. So far, we have heard about different dimensions of biodiversity. And I would only say that unless we are able to sell it to the policymakers, the value of biodiversity, we will not be able to really get the kind of necessary support from the government. And in order to do that, we have to at least identify the potentials that we can use, or how best to say the word exploit is wrong, but how to optimally utilize the aspects of biodiversity in our day-to-day and for the future to come. And for that, there has to be a kind of, what I can say is, the business and biodiversity should go hand in hand, and only then we will be in a better position to absolutely go forward in this direction. Now, it is very important to identify where exactly we should be heading in the years to come. As all of you have said, biodiversity is multidimensional, interactive, and anything that stabilizes an ecosystem is said to have a stable biodiversity. But then it has various dimensions of aquatic life, plant life, microbial life, insect life, and etc., and more importantly, their interaction. So my first thing is, agrobiodiversity and ecosystem services are two sides of the same coin. And if you want to really understand and bring business, we have to do the valuation of ecosystem services. And that valuation of ecosystem services, when persons begin to appreciate both in terms of economy as well as the long-term benefits to the economy and livelihood, automatically business will flow back into this. For example, we have in the National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources and so many ICR institutes, we have lakhs and lakhs of germplasm that is there. But the question of it is, do we have, how much of it is commercially viable? And have we really looked into the commercial viability of the germplasms that we have stored in our repository? Unfortunately, the link between science to technology and technology to commerce is lacking. One of the most significant examples is how a single dominant gene contributed to both to the blast as well as to the blight resistance in rice. And today that contributed to one of the finest rice varieties, improvement in basmati rice, which I am told is to the tune of 60,000 to 80,000 crores of rupees. Now there are two dimensions into this, the donor genes that contributed to this and the total export that is going out of the country because of the very robust varieties that were bred out from this. But what is lacking is both the breeders and the national system which helped to develop have absolutely not made any money into this. So the question of it is, when you want to make a business out of biodiversity, you should, more than the science, you should also understand the intricacies of business. In the intricacies of business, royalty is very important aspect. And unfortunately, in the Indian context, we do not value the term royalty at all. And unless that brings into the aspect of biodiversity, we will never be able to commercially be successful, and we cannot translate biodiversity into real commercial success. One other example that I would like to quote is the Uganda UG99, one of the rusts which was devastating or has devastated many parts of the world. But luckily, India was ahead of time, sent all its germplasms to the CIMMET and got them screened for resistance. And we have a number of resistant lines in our repository. But the question is, how best are we going to make use of it, both in terms of monetary terms and also explain to the policymakers, look, these are the ones which contributed for the reduction of hunger, for the success of the crop, and thereby making a livelihood security for millions of people. Another thing that, as Dr. Padida said, is we have tremendous number of farmers varieties, and unfortunately or fortunately, the diversity is humongous in each and every state. Now, we have not really profiled them for a number of attributes, and they will come very handy because of their specific trait attributes in the days to come, and that needs to be taken crop-wise, region-wise for us to go in a big way. India is a land, one of the centers of biodiversity, but we are also the both primary and secondary centers of diversity of innumerable number of crops. Traditionally, many of the varieties, vegetables, fruits, medicinal plants that we have only knowledge in forms of wisdom, but it has not really translated into commercial success. For example, Ayurveda and many other forms which use medicinal plants, we have not been able to very successfully go into the active ingredient. As a result, we have not been able to commercially we are only exporting more of raw material in medicinal plants instead of going for the active ingredients. So we are not able to commercialize the extent to which we should be commercializing. So this is one just example. Similarly, the number of, somebody said about the crop wild relatives. The crop wild relatives are the future answers to the both in terms of food security as well as our answers to disease and pest resistance. Let me give a couple of examples. The okra that we are eating predominantly today, it was bred, the resistance to yellow vine mosaic came from Abelmascus mastitis. The public sector could not make any money out of this. Same thing is in rice, same thing is in many other crops. Maize itself is an example where the progenitor teosinte made a great deal of difference. Now, to quote an example, all the hybrid tomatoes to a great extent are derivatives of PI 1777, this Lycopersicum habrocatus, which is the donor gene, and that one particular habrocatus line has provided or given a lot of answers to the leaf curl resistance. Now, what we have addressed is only a tip of the iceberg. What we have not in this country really looked into the crop wild relatives, both for abiotic and biotic stress. Very often, the crop wild relatives comes with multiple disease resistance. But having worked in horticulture segment, I would like to go into a different dimension of crop wild relatives, where crop wild relatives need not be used for breeding, but they can be straight away used as rootstocks, both in fruit plants as well as in a number of vegetables is the order of the day. What is the great advantage? A one rootstock which is salt tolerant is also tolerant to moisture stress. In all probability will also be tolerant to nematode stress and probably a plethora of or a host of plant pathogens. Now, this is the kind of advantage, and it does not take the traditional breeding of waiting for 8 to 10 or 15 years, but straight away can be integrated as a rootstocks. Let us all appreciate that the entire grapes in our country today is standing on dogridge rootstock, one of the wild relatives, which was originally there in South Africa, are salt resistant, but it is also drought resistant. And we thank our grape industry. One of the greatest contribution has been the dogridge rootstock. The same thing can be said of citrus. The same thing can be said of a number of other things. Many of the underutilized crops of this country, which traditionally form the breadbasket, have actually slowly disappeared with the onslaughts of cauliflower, cabbage, and many other Western crops, and we have forgotten the diversity that we have in legumes. Just to give a small example, The three native fruits of this country are jack, mango, and banana. Look at the diversity of jack that we have, both for fruit as well as a vegetable. We have not exploited jack to the extent that it should have been, because it is one of the most wonderful crops without any great deal of pest and diseases, grows everywhere, wonderful source of energy, humongous diversity with regard to the fruit types, shape, and the product, as well as it could be a wonderful source of animal feed. And not only the one cultivated type, but there are a number of species that are already available that needs to be mainstreamed. One, thanks to Dr. Padre from the West Coast, this particular crop would not have attained the level of commercialization. One of the greatest examples in other thing I would also like to tell is the custard apple. One of the costliest fruits today, Arca sahan, which due to metaxenia effect between a cross between reticulata and some of the wild species, absolutely contributed to 4 times increase in size and has made a great deal of difference in the Indian market. But we also have got Anana muricata, a wild species which is highly demanded in the cancer industry and under natural condition is resistant to fruit fly. Now, these are all things that we have to conserve, we have to propagate. Unfortunately, there is a great deal of information that is lacking. Dr. Mathur sir, I would like to say, while we have been only talking about conserving the plants in the native habitat, we have not made cryoconservation. If entire animal genetics and animal kingdom is conserved through sperm banks, why is it that we are hesitant to conserve our medicinal plants, crop wild relatives, underutilized crops through cryoconservation, which can be directly used as a commercial product for anybody across the world for their breeding purpose, is something that needs to be immediately focused upon. Same thing applies to Jewish plum. Same thing applies to Jewish plum because it is very rich in iron, the diversity. Similarly is the case with bear. If anybody goes to Rajasthan, the parts of Haryana, the diversity of bear is tremendous. This is an extremely hardy plant which can easily give 50 kgs to about 75 kgs of fruit without any great input. And the fruits are absolutely great and they need to be looked into. Same thing is with tamarind. Same thing with some of the wild cucurbits. Some of the wild cucurbits in Eastern India have become extremely popular in Western Ghats, mainly because through introduction, and they need to be conserved and brought forth. But if horticulture has to make a great deal of difference, 2 segments of horticulture will make a difference. One is the dryland horticulture, another is the temperate horticulture. Except for walnut, we have a variety called Umri, which is one of the finest apples, and unfortunately, it is absolutely cultivated here and there, and that needs to be conserved. Now, I won't speak about walnut. I won't speak about butterfruit. I won't speak because what we are attempting in this is only tip of the iceberg. We have to conserve these fruits. We have to conserve the diversity. We have to profile the diversity and also do the pollen cryoreservation if we have to make a mark. I would briefly touch upon the soil microbes. Without soil, soil is the edifice and nothing moves beyond soil. And our soils are extremely rich in terms of the organisms that we are talking. Just imagine, we do not know how many types of Bt is there in our soil. How many types of useful microbials are there in our soil? Have we really profiled them to the extent that we need? Have we done a good profiling of some of the nitrogen fixing bacteria? I think the answer is we have not even touched. And some of them are extremely good. For example, one of the work carried out by Dr. Uma Shankar in UAS Bangalore very clearly demonstrated that in a plant which is suffering from high temperature or salt, if you introduced the root bioinoculum from the plant, from the natural habitat, the plant which is otherwise under stress because of the action of microbials that are associated traditionally in abiotic stress conditions, the plant responds better. Now we are looking not just through the plant, we have to look through the commercialization of these things. Same thing with some of the organisms which are there in the thermal springs and also in extreme environments. For example, the bacterium that are associated with heavy metal degradation have to be conserved, profiled, and brought it into the mainstream. Similarly, growth promoting rhizobacteria. These are all some of the things. When we are talking about vermicompost, everybody talks about 2-3 species of African worms. How many earthworms are there in this country? How many of them survive in what kind of soil? How many of them are really able to proliferate better? How many of them are able to tolerate different abiotic stress conditions is something which is worth investigating and directly contributes to soil health. Same thing applies to entomopathogens, whether it is Bavaria, Metarrhizum. Every region of the country is rich with microbials, and these microbials, which are specific to many of the, not only just for phosphorus uptake, or for that matter, addressing the nematode problems or many of the pathogens, they have to be profiled in every region and brought it into the mainstream, whether it is Bacillomyces or whether it is Hirsutella thompsoni or any of the others. And they can be useful in a number of things, including heavy metal remediation. Unfortunately, India is one of the countries where the biopesticides, or I can say, and the biofertilizers have made a good dent, but what we have achieved is very limited. Now, the world is beginning to recognize the role of biofertilizers and biopesticides. We have to move in a big way. The same thing is with regard to some of the native varieties of guava, native varieties of jamun. Let me give a simple example with respect to banana, which is one of the most important crops. Banana, today we are 65% of our banana that we are cultivating is only Cavendish type G9, simply because tissue culture banana is available. Now, every time when one particular variety dominates, it is at the cost of diversity of the other species. Many of you may not know the Gross Mitchell variety that was earlier to Cavendish simply vanished from the world because of the Panama wilt. And only one small clone that was there in the Kew Garden is today's Cavendish, which is occupying 65% of the area in India and also dominant all over the globe. Now, what is the damage to that? One of the most serious disease called tropical race 4 of Panama, the Panama wilt, which was earlier not damaging Cavendish, has entered into this country. And in Bihar, parts of Uttar Pradesh, and many other regions, it has devastated banana cultivation. Now, this is where the value of our traditional banana varieties comes into picture, and they hold, along with primers, or again microbial agents. You have to harden the plants as well as use the resistant inoculum. That is where biodiversity comes into picture. And it's the same thing with leafy vegetables, and same thing with many of the underutilized crops. We have, for example, moringa you take. Anybody who asks moringa, it is only PKM1. What happened to all the diversity? We have coccinia, we have chow chow. In the entire Northeast, the diversity of chow chow has never, or the Syzygium, it has never become mainstream. So what I'm really saying is, there is a tremendous opportunity to profile, to identify the active ingredients. For example, medicinal plants. This country has to have a more robust investment in medicinal plants, not just for the commercial success, but future generations to come. Nobody will be able to afford the cost of medicine unless today we tap into. Similarly is with the pollinators. Conservation of pollinators. One of the things that was a great success in the Western countries, without disturbing the worker bee, you can directly extract honey from the hives. These type of technologies is one which has to be combined for conservation of our biodiversity. Crop-wide relatives, again, not just for drought and salinity, many of them like Solanum tarvum, what we call Sundaka, is extremely useful for even under heavy moisture conditions. We have not used a number of other species of Solanum, and we have not even profiled them. So my protected cultivation, polyhouse cultivation is the order of the day, but rootstocks are going to play a tremendous picture. We have got diversity in terms of orange flesh in sweet potato. Lastly, the mushrooms. The diversity of mushrooms in this country is enormous. And what we have done with mushroom diversity, which is one of the excellent source of vitamin D, is we have not brought it under the mainstream, either because of shortage of the spawn material or because of the some kind of a mindset, as well as the availability of mushrooms at affordable price. But in the urbanization, it is going to increase in enormous number, and they will play an increasing number. Dr. Chandish is going to talk about biological control, but I will not touch it in detail. except to say our natural enemies are our wealth. The parasitoids from India saved the citrus industry. The parasitoids saved the papaya industry through papaya by management of papaya melibon. Parasitoids saved the eucalyptus. Parasitoids and my pathogens have been an answer to many of our problems, which I'm sure Dr. Chandish is going to talk. But we have to bring them under mainstream commercialization, which is already taking place, but needs a lot of support. Whenever we talk of biodiversity, we talk only of mainland. We forget about Andamans. Andaman itself is one of the wonderful hotspots. When I was at DDG Horticulture, the institute was under me. I can say that Andamani pig, Nicobari pig, Nicobari fowl, and some of the species of butterflies, the purple-fleshed mango, the diversity is just, even for that matter, Padak. I'm sure our chairman NBA will understand. We have not been able to make use to the extent that we should be making use. So we have to combine industry with our biodiversity, like we did for the encapsulation of biofertilizers, or for that matter, developing micropropagation protocols, or by using kalpa rasa that we did in coconut, as well as virgin coconut oil. A number of opportunities arises. The thing is, it is like we say, all the inventions came from the West, but the money was made in the East. Now, somewhere we are in between. We have to understand our biodiversity, but more importantly, we should also try to understand how to translate that knowledge into wisdom, and wisdom into commerce, and commerce into trade. Only then we will be in a better position to do it. Thank you very much. Over. Hello?
Hello.
Over.
Thank you very much, sir. So, Dr. Anil Kumar, can you introduce Dr. Sudha Mysore? Hello? Is it audible?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. We have seen all your slides, very interesting, and we have seen a lot of a lot of horticultural biodiversity. We have seen it's very interesting. Definitely, we can do a lot of business exploring these biodiversity. And I would like to introduce the third speaker, Sudha Mysore. She's going to speak on impediments in successful commercialization of agricultural technologies. She's an economist, currently serving as the CEO, Agri Innovate India Limited, a Government of India company. She's a Fulbright scholar and a research interest are integrating econometrics methodology for farm production efficiency, technology adaptation, linking farmers to markets, intellectual property rights, and commercialization. Over to Dr. Sudha Mysore.
Thank you, sir. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, madam.
Yeah, so thank you very much for giving this opportunity. This is the first time that we are interacting with NBA and MSSRF. It's a great privilege, sir, that you have given to me. I will not take more than 10 minutes. I think I should be able to complete within 10 minutes. As you can see on the first slide, this is Agri Innovate India Limited. This is a Government of India enterprise, which is owned by DARE. DG ICAR is our chairman, and all the honorable directors guide this company. Of course, we have a very vibrant system of technology management and intellectual property rights in ICAR. This has been on since 2006 when we signed our intellectual property policy. But now what has happened is we have a 3-tier system where we have technology management unit, business management, and institute technology management units, which have been very successfully commercializing technologies. But now it has been handed over to Agri Innovate, which is a company under ICAR, which is supposed to be the front runner and take care of all the technology commercialization. Our primary objective is to make sure that all technologies, market-ready technologies, are showcased on our website, which is available for people to see and access it. And we also impart them capacity building and help them in technology evaluation and pricing. Of course, our priority areas are seed and planting material, bio-based agri-inputs, animal husbandry, dairy and fishery products, post-harvest value products, biological products. These are all the areas we are dealing with. And we cover all in our system, covering about 110 institutes, and some of the state agriculture universities also can be part of us. Of course, this company has started in 2011, but it started performing much later. And last year we had done extremely well. I will not get into the details of, we have already commercialized about 52 technologies and earned about nearly 1.5 to 2 crores. And this year also we have done well. Now, I just wanted to stress upon the impediments. That is what the topic given to me. But I just wanted to, just out of my interest in biodiversity conservation and business potential. Now, if anyone who has gone to Chittoor or any mango mandi or any mango area, the picture I hope is visible. You can see like the people invite you with a variety of mangoes and say, which one you want, choose from this. That's a kind of a varietal diversity which is available in mango, but sustainable livelihood utilization. But unfortunately, we don't utilize much of it, and we only concentrate on maybe maximum 20 or 10 or 20 varieties. That is very unfortunate. Similar is the case with nutritionally balanced diet also. We have a huge potential, business potential, but we don't make much use of it. And similar is the case with some of the bio inputs, plant growth promotion. But what happens is they reduce the use of even fertilizers. Dr. Krishna Kumar mentioned about some of these growth promoters, bio inputs, but we have not been able to utilize it to the extent possible. One interesting feature which came to one of my studies is that we went to Kokam, the Goa region, an entire belt there, and kokum is one of the most utilized product. And to our surprise, we found that there is a nice company which is making useful medicinal value products and providing livelihood support to the farmers in that region. Several such examples are there where people have made use of the potential and run businesses, but of course there are not many and not much more can be done. Now, I straight away get into the impediments in agri-technology commercialization. I'll just have only 3 slides, which I hope to cover the thing. I think Dr. Krishna Kumar has very vividly brought out the kind of diversity that is available. Now, one of the things to me is that the nature and characteristics of agri-technology itself is one big impediment which comes in the way of technology commercialization. These, we can classify them into 2 aspects. One is lab or R&D associated. The other side is the market and demand associated. Now we are covering a diversified product and varied products, which each has a very different compliances requirements. For example, seed, if you take, seed has varieties, hybrids have varied systems which have to be complied with. Similar is the case with diagnostics, or if you talk about biopesticides, the compliance systems are so different that as many times we end up spending a lot of time and meeting these compliances and then bringing it to the product to the market. Now, one of the things is that mostly we are all going more into hybrids and we are leaving out the varieties, because what happens is the return on investment in conservation versus the commercial value is so high that we are often tend to go towards forgetting conservation and go for commercial value. For example, if you take, Dr. Krishna Kumar has mentioned that also, you take any tomato varieties, these are all most important ones, and hybrids we concentrate and we forget the other varieties and others because we either don't have the return on investment is largely driving this. Now, one more aspect that we have to keep in mind in the research-oriented problem is that many times I come across technologies which are market ready, but this is at a proof of concept stage, but at the same time it is ready for use. For example, diagnostic kits for adulteration in milk. Very simple concept, but it is very highly useful. But what happens is there is a huge demand. Somebody wants to take it on an exclusive licensing basis because they want to improvise it and take it outside. So that's kind of a exclusive licensing is not permitted. So we are unable to take advantage of some of these technologies. And another important aspect is we lack methodology for valuing the technology. The trade specificity, or what exactly is the one which is contributing substantially to the growth, productivity enhancement, we are not able to value it and say this is the value of the technology and I require this much money if I have to part with it. Many times these are some of the problems we face. On the other side, we always have the market or demand side, where there is always a section which is always pushing us. There is a dilemma between commercialization versus subsidization. People want everything to be subsidized. Give it free. It is a government organization. Why can't I have it free? That is one important aspect we need to face. Even the corporate sector wants most of it as a peanuts or no value at all. Then the complexity of technology pricing. I think Dr. Krishna Kumar also touched upon this, is that when we want to price it, we have to look at the royalty payments or the upfront value. But when it comes to royalty, nobody wants to, the corporate sector doesn't want to pay royalty, or many of the companies just don't want to pay royalty. And they want to have a pricing which is very just cost based and as simple as that. And within, they want to have only less value to be given. Then second thing is when these companies come to take technologies from us, we don't have the capacity to do due diligence or find out what kind of problems they have. Is it a genuine person? Will we be able to pay our royalties? Will he be genuine to us? These are some of the issues we are still groping with. And one more issue which comes up is many times they have a small portion of it is owned by a foreigner, and the foreign equity is there, then we have to go to NBA clearance, and we are not sure whether we have to give it to them. These are all, many such issues come up. And most of them want everything on an exclusive basis. And as a Government of India organization, we are not in a position to give an exclusive license to anyone. So, and also they want, there is always, now the startups are coming up. There is so much pressure on us to give at a differential price, or startups are just starting. Why can't we subsidize them, give them free? This kind of issues are there. This is one aspect of the nature and characteristics of agriculture technology itself is posing a lot of problem. The second one is very much related to regulatory compliances issues. And there is not policy clarity on regulatory requirements. For example, Krishna Kumar also spoke about biopesticides, biofertilizers, and useful bacteria. We have several such products which are available, which have been collected from forest ecosystems. Many places we don't know who is the owner or which community owned by it. We brought it and we made it into very good, useful products. But now we have to meet the policy requirements, regulatory requirements by NBA, sometimes CIBRC, which is, I sincerely feel that we should have a separate system for bio products and not go through the commercial product of CIBRC, which is very expensive and takes a lot of time. And similar is the case with PPVFRI. They want us to register with PPVFRI and pay an amount of 8,000 or 10,000. I fully honor that they are statutory bodies and we have to honor them. But what happens is you are not sure of the commercial value of your product. But if you have to pay upfront, then it becomes very difficult for the researchers to go forward. And also the environmentally safe products. For example, we've spoken about biopesticides or plant growth promoting organisms. There's not much encouragement for these. Even if it is there, there is always a question that what happens is you are used as a PGPA or produced it as a growth promoter, but it is helping you in the reduction of nitrogen intake, uptake by the plants. So this kind of data requirements are there, which we need to provide. And for that, what I find is that there is not enough resources are available for addressing and adapting this requirements, meeting these requirements. These are all some of the issues that we really need to look at when we want to encourage agri-biodiversity. The other one is, I feel there seems to be a vision itself for the wider agri-technology transformation itself is lacking. Research focus on biodiversity conservation has to be enhanced, and I think we need to take new initiatives and take it forward. There is always a question between investment in commercial crops versus sustainable farming system. There is a mention about integrated pest management or integrated farming systems, but we do not want to give emphasis on it. Even the vision or the policy itself is favoring more towards the commercial farm and how to make commercial money. So these are some of the aspects which we need to look into it. Nutritional versus food security, once again, is a very unfortunate situation. And we all know that millets recently started getting importance because always they were neglected crops for whatever reason. Only now importance has come because of the global requirements. Now, one more thing I just wanted to highlight is these pictures I have put here. The product promotion strategies for biodiversity conservation are many. I am just giving an example. I happened to be in Manila some time back, and I found that they have, you can see in the picture, they have specific regions where they got Cebu. It's a province from where these products have come. They have given a marketplace where these products can be displayed and they can be sold. These are some of the models which we need to, if we need to promote, we need to look at these things. And one more thing is, whenever we visit a farmer's field or we talk to them, they give a platter which is nutritionally secured and having a lot of ingredients in it. I think we need to promote such things. And I was very happy to see this millet mission in Rabi. I think at least after a long time, at least we have been able to come and have some kind of a stress on this. With these few words, I thank you all for giving me this opportunity. I hope I managed to communicate what are the importance in technology commercialization. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sudha Mysore. Though I missed partly your talk and also partly the talk of Dr. Krishna Kumar, because of the sudden power cutoff, and there was no backup power for me. Sorry for that. We have a next speaker. We will towards the end we will have a kind of a concluding session. So there, whatever missing points the speakers should be able to contribute there. I request the remaining speakers to be there. And we have the last speaker now, Dr. Sunil Archak. He is going to speak on resource mainstreaming for food and nutrition security. He is associated with the NBPGR. So he is researching on the plant genetic resources for the past 20 years. And his specific interest is actually molecular genetic analysis, as well as the bioinformatics. He is currently working in the area of PGR informatics. I am inviting him to speak on resource mainstreaming for food and nutrition security. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I hope I'm audible and my slides are visible.
Yeah, at least.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It is an honor to be participating along with so many luminaries. Thank you very much. I am from National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources, which houses one of the top 3 gene banks in the world. So our job is conservation. So this is extremely relevant. This particular webinar is very relevant to us. However, I would have been very happy to be sharing the diversity, the slides that have been shared by Dr. Krishna Kumar and Dr. Parida, because that's our bread and butter. But the first message from this particular webinar is that we have to go out of our comfort zone. So it's not just the conservation, it's the next step that we are talking about. And what is that? And that is this 4C continuum, which the chairman mentioned in his opening remarks, and it is also there in our brochure that you have circulated. And what is that? That is conservation to cultivation to consumption and to commerce. And then we can see that in this diagram that the commerce doesn't have an arrow. That means right now we are not very sure in our pipeline that how it's going to flow back into the conservation. And most of the times it is the government which is supporting the conservation. And the red lines you can see that there is no commensurate flow back, paying back of whatever commerce has been produced so far into the conservation. So that means that we have to refine this particular proposed continuum. Now I would like to mention a couple of points here. This particular 4C is very, very clear in its intent, but we know that it's not very easy to manage. There is a challenge in managing this particular continuum. And it's also very important to understand that from conservation to commerce, especially in case of agrobiodiversity, it's not very easy. It is because of the fragmented use. It is because of the fractional use of the conserved products, conserved entities into the final commercial product. So it's not very easy. Now the third, and which is very, very important, I would like to highlight here, is when we want to bring from conservation to cultivation, it is a double-edged sword. Look, we always talk about how we have lost our huge number of land races, huge number of farmers varieties. Why that happened? Because we tried to choose one best, the one which is best, which was suited commercially. So the same thing might happen. So we should be very, very careful in thinking of bringing selected ones into cultivation, because there is always a chance of losing allele frequencies in the populations. Now, the last point which I want to make through this slide is we always use the word agrobiodiversity. We have been using in this webinar. We use everywhere else, but in our mind we always think about plant genetic resources. So the plans and actions are sometimes very restricted. So we should be a little careful about when we are talking about having a commercial linkages, and we should not restrict ourselves to only crop biodiversity. Now there are two documents which I want to highlight in my very short presentation. One, perhaps all of you have seen this one, the first document on the left, that is Moving Mountains, Unlocking Private Capital for Biodiversity and Ecosystems, that has come very recently. And it's an extremely, extremely well prepared document. And some of the people who are sitting here are part of the preparation in this, and really it has come very well. And it forms the basis of our understanding of the difficulty in estimations and difficulty in joining the conservation and its commercial viability. And the one which is on the right is specific to plant genetic resources, which I want to highlight because it's my specialization. It's a document which is prepared by International Seed Federation. I'll go through these first 2-3 slides very fast because a lot of things have been covered. The most important message from this Moving Mountains document is that basically it is government funded activity right now, the conservation. So it requires, there is a shortage of 40%, gap is there, and which we should start looking forward to fill it by participation of private entities. Now, when I talk about these things with my own colleagues, forget about the people in NGOs or in public at large, my own colleagues in scientific organizations, that how can private sector be part of our operations? We all know that everybody agrees now to the first point, that is private sector should be responsible for offsetting its impact on environment. Yes, everybody is very happy, very readily they agree on this. And the second point, private sector can benefit from biodiversity and ecosystem conservation and restoration. We are not sure about this. People don't know about that. And third point, investing in these areas is not only affordable for private entities, but it is also beneficial and highly profitable. And then we suddenly become gagged, we gag ourselves. Now this is where we have to open up and then try to see where we have to work upon, what are those doors and windows we have to open in our minds as well as in our operations. Now, how can the private sector contribute to conservation? Very easy. So far, mostly their participation is through their taxes, what they pay, through CSR, through philanthropy, but it is very, very small, peanuts. So what is possible? So what has been estimated in some of these documents that have been created very nicely are through examples are there: sustainable aquaculture, organic farming, large-scale agroforestry projects, deforestation-free commodity production, etc., etc. There are funds, there are agencies that are available. Nice examples are available. All those are there. Now, everywhere this word is used: value, valuation. Now, what is the value of the market or the value of the opportunities that are estimated? It's about 356 billion, and it is not that much. It is 5 to 10% rates of return. So it is indeed a very, very attractive prospect. Now, from here, I just want to quickly go to the agrobiodiversity. When you see these market opportunities, from left to right, there are various options are there. One is sustainable agriculture, forestry, fisheries, then ecotourism, green infrastructure, and then various options. Look at the first one, the sustainable agriculture, forestry, and fishery products. The market potential is $418 billion US. That means it is very, very huge, very huge. And where do we stand here then? If we already know that this could be a really, really worthwhile, let's say that we should work upon this, where do we stand? Not very rosy picture. If we think that we are thinking on something for the first time, and then it's wrong. Globally, it is always on. It is already on everywhere else. The private investment and the private participation in agrobiodiversity use management is all on. It's only that we have to think how we have to implement it in India. The second point is the intellectual property vista in plant genetic resources management and utilization is changing very fast. Earlier, we thought that it is only, we always attached the emotional kind of thing to our plant genetic resources. Gene banks were considered as custodians, not really for nothing to talk about commercialization. It's a taboo to talk about commercialization in a gene bank, but it is no more so. It's changing. The third one is what is happening in globally about access and benefit sharing of plant genetic resources, which is governed by International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources, ITPGRFA, also called as treaty. So where are we going to? Gene banks and international treaty. I also want to mention here that there are some efforts from NBPGR and then associated societies here that we tried our best to involve people from private sector, involve people from legal fraternity, as to understand the nuances and the intricacies of access and benefit sharing, and how can we strike a balance between what is going on and what has to change. We are trying, but there is a lot to be done. Okay, now I want to just give you small examples how things have changed in the past 5 years. We have big gene banks around the world, which are called as CG gene banks, such as ICRISAT, IRI, CIMIT. Okay, these are all governed by CGIAR consultative groups. They have come about with the CGIAR principles on management of intellectual assets, which was not earlier existing at all. That means now they recognize that gene banks hold some intellectual assets. So whether gene bank intellectual assets are coming out of only their research on their plant genetic resources, need not be so. Look at point number 5, the one which I have highlighted with the box. Intellectual property associated with various things, including germplasm. So that means even germplasm is now being considered as a refined intellectual property. So things are changing globally. Are we changing is the question. Now, IRI, International Rice Research Institute, has a very clear IP licensing form, in which they say very clearly that it includes the cultivars, it includes germplasm, it includes various things, and it includes non-exclusive access to specific access. And IRI enters into business partnerships with various entities, including multinational companies. Now, what is happening globally with respect to access to genetic resources that are present in gene banks? India is a signatory. India is a founder member of International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture. So how we work in National Gene Bank of India is governed by what all the countries, all the parties to this particular treaty decide together as to what should be a rule and regulation, what should be the framework under which entities, whether it is public or private, will access the material, use the material, and share the benefits, because these are the benefits which will then be flowed back to conservation activities. So what is that? Look at the third point. These are the three objectives of the treaty. The third point says that the objective is to ensure that the recipients share benefits they derive from the use of these genetic materials that they access from gene banks with the countries where they have been originated. Fantastic. So the very sentence says that it is post facto. That means you access the material, use the material, make profits, and then share profits. So it's very clear here. The sentence, the objective itself makes it very clear that the access comes first, sharing benefit comes later. So what has happened over a period of time? Over a period of time, the various countries have accessed the material, various public and private institutions, individuals, corporations have accessed the material. That means access has no problem. The objective of access is complied with. Look at this, for example. This is the recipient countries by number of accessions, this particular graph from the treaty. And India is at the forefront. So we are receiving the public institutions as well as private institutions receive material in the form of germplasm or nursery material from all these places. So there is no problem with respect to receiving material. Access is there, but benefit sharing has been a problem. Okay, benefit sharing has been a problem. So there has been a talk over last few years, say last two governing body meetings, that there must be an increased participation of multinational or private seed companies who are actually going to use this material in a great form and then pay sufficiently. That means the benefit sharing will be expected at a higher rate. But the condition for that from the seed companies was that two. Number one, there must be a revision in this agreement, that is how we access and how we pay, etc. And that there should be an expansion of the coverage. Right now, internationally, everything that is available in the gene bank is not available under the SMTA, that is Standard Material Transfer Agreement. It is not available. Some gene banks share anyway, but otherwise we are not bound by this agreement to share everything that we have. We are expected to share only around 64 species. Okay, private companies want that they should be expanded. We also want that they should be expanded because the number of nutritionally important vegetables and fruits are not existing in this particular list of crops, which is called as Annex 1. So we also want to do that. So what is happening then? Right now, it is proposed that we should have what is called as a subscription system. This is very important. I would like to draw the attention of all the participants, please. The proposal is to have a subscription system, like we have a subscription for journals, we have a subscription for Netflix and Amazon. You should have a subscription system. That means you pay in advance. You pay in advance, and then you access whatever you want. And that intricacies of the how system should work is being discussed. But the system is, people are proposing the change, transformation of the system. That means you access, you pay, you commercialize whenever you will commercialize, and then pay whenever you want to pay voluntarily. No, it's not. No, it's no more like that. The proposal is that you subscribe, you pay and you subscribe. Whether you want to use it, whether you will be successful in your commercial operation, it's up to you. So that's how it is happening. That means whether India is thinking or not, whether we are ready to work upon this or not, entire world is moving towards this. The developed countries are moving towards this. Developing countries are also moving towards this, because developed countries which house the seed companies want material. Developing countries want funds for maintenance and conservation of their resources. And these details are not very important at this point of time, but it is what I want to tell from this is that minor details are also being worked out. What rate, when to pay, how to pay, where that bank balance is going to be held, all those details are being worked out. So the take-home message from this is, with respect to access to the material that is available ex situ in the gene banks around the world, the rules are the rules of the game are being changed. Okay. Now the other point which I want to highlight here is, there are three aspects from my side to commercial use of genetic resources or agrobiodiversity. One, as the material itself, whether it is available held in ex situ or in situ or on farm, wherever they are available, and whether it is accessed in one time or continuous multiple recurrent access. Okay. The second one is about the services, which some people talked about, but many things have to be, let's say, worked upon this, because greater commercial benefit will be there in the services. We have not perhaps imagined, or we have not estimated the amount of that that can be held. And the third one is on this slide, what I have mentioned here, about the dematerialized use of PGR. So because of the technological advancements, I may not need the material at all. I just need what kind of genes are there in that, and I'll be able to use that one for whatever purpose I want. So these technologies are available. Synthetic biology has progressed enormously fast. So people are working on that. So we have to be prepared. My message here is that it is excellent to talk about, yes, we have to involve private entities, we have to involve everybody, because our objective is to enhance conservation, and conservation cannot be done without utilization. Excellent. Yes, everybody agrees on that. But we have to be very clear about the participants who are there, the implications of national and international participants in our endeavor. And the third one is, are we prepared? Have we inventorized everything, or have we internalized the technological advances in this? So only when we can do all these things, we will be confident enough to lay out, look, this is our flip cart. This is the card that we have, and then access whatever you want, and these are the rules. But right now, I somehow feel shy in doing so. So just to summarize with these 4 bullets, increase in the investment of private entities and reduction in the involvement of public institutions in varietal development and seed production, and which is why indirectly to the access to genetic resources in India is imminent. That means private entities, which are already major part in India, it's going to increase. The second point is, access to PGR by private must be facilitated. If we do not formulate the guidelines and then framework and then make it easy, we will not be able to do that. But from here, I'll directly want to jump to the 4th point. We are facing a problem of not having evaluated our own plant genetic resources. Even if, let's say, Dr. Krishna Kumar mentioned that have we identified something which is business ready gene bank entity? No, we have identified. And if the private entity comes and say that, no, we want to access that one, how do we pay? What do we pay? How much do we pay? We don't know. So we have not yet evaluated our PGR. So we are not sure on that. So I must agree, and then we are working on that. And the third point, which I want to mention as the last point here, is in PGR, business opportunities are already being exploited globally. And if we miss now, we will miss forever. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sunil Archak. It was a very brilliant talk, I must say. For that matter, all the talks. But in particular, this one was really pointing towards the need of the hour. So this, Thompson, we don't have the other speaker with us, Dr. Sunita.
We have one more speaker.
Yeah.
She is Dr. Sunita Purushottam. She is from Mahindra Lifespace Developers from Mumbai. She has more than 20 years of experience working for environmental impact assessment regulatory bodies in UK and India for various infrastructure development projects, city planning, construction projects, and climate change and adaptation issues.
Dr. Sunita has executed over 50 engagements related to sustainable business strategies, sustainable development and cooperation responsibility across UK, United Kingdom and United States of America, Mexico, South Africa and India. Over to Dr. Sunita Purushottam.
Thank you so much. It's indeed an honor to be part of this discussion today. I definitely don't have the wealth of knowledge that all the other speakers have. And therefore, the perspective that I will be sharing will be slightly different. So the perspective is primarily from the angle of the common man and the business. So the business angle and the common man. So that is the perspective that I would like to share. Just bear with me for a minute. I will share my screen just. Hold on. So I head sustainability for Mahindra Life Spaces, and we are a developer.
We are not able to see your screen.
No, I'm sharing. Just bear with me for a minute. I'm trying to just locate the file. Give me a minute. It was just open. Yeah. So we are a developer. We are into three types of development: residential, affordable housing, and mid and premium segment. We are also into developing cities. Mahindra World City Jaipur, Mahindra World City Chennai.
Dr. Sunita, still we could not see your slide.
Yes. I am sharing my screen now. So just bear with me.
Or we can help you.
No, I'm just trying to see because I can't see it in the. Yeah, just give me a minute.
We have your presentation, shall we?
Yeah, if you can share, that'd be great because it's not showing up on my screen. I can't.
Shared it.
Yes, thank you so much. So how can we be part of this movement, and how can we, through our projects, incorporate biodiversity into our projects? And why is it important that we also start to understand this language from a business perspective and also from the customer perspective? Who are we selling the properties to? Who are the people in the cities? Ultimately, they're the citizens of the country. And as we know that we are all aware that biodiversity loss is one of the key areas of key threats that has come up, and it will impact the world GDP, dependent on how highly dependent we are on nature and its services. Next slide, please. So a lot of services are provided by nature, and best things in life are actually free. Including air, water, and so on. It's how we are able to utilize the services of nature, which without realization, it performs climate regulation, air quality purification, pest disease control, flood and storm protection, soil quality preservation, water quality, groundwater, and so on. Maintaining the water flow both above the ground and below the ground. All of this is provided by nature. Similarly, flood and storm protection control. Flood and storm control and protection. So if we are working with nature, then the amount of intervention that we have to provide reduces. So how do we make projects more akin to nature? So we thought that we should develop a framework that helps us understand how we should be incorporating it into our projects so that we are able to enjoy the services that nature produces. Next slide, please. So that's what this presentation is about. So what are the steps we need to take? Next. Yeah, so this framework basically, like the earlier speakers also alluded to it, but how do we do it within the organization? So if we talk a lot, which is technical, it becomes very difficult to engage the employees and even the customers for that matter. So getting speakers in who are able to translate that language into the organization, that what we should be doing, that helps. So expert talks leading to employee engagement. But we need to have a overarching framework or a policy. So which is primarily around what is our sustainability policy. It covers sustainable sites, offices, and sustainable communities, and also the product itself that we are developing, whether it's a city or an industrial cluster or the affordable housing or mid-premium segment housing. But also we need to understand how we should be developing the green area in line with nature, and what we need to do around trees which are there in the properties that we are going to develop on. And that translates into action, and this action can be in terms of developing urban forests, Miyawaki method forests, or customer engagement, and also doing the biodiversity studies. So we understand what are the native species and how we should be working and incorporating that into our entire living space, extended living space. Next slide, please. So we said, okay, we'll make something very simple, and which acts as a framework or a resolution to protect and enhance biodiversity across our locations. Topsoil preservation, soil composting, protecting the natural grass and reduce the turf area, introduce simple things for bird baths and insects. Fires should not be used for clearing sites. Mulch all the garden waste to preserve moisture, integrate food farming. So can we integrate food farming into our projects? And that will be beneficial to the customers also. And anything that we develop in our landscape, we shouldn't be using artificial pesticides and fertilizers. It should all come off from the compost that is generated due to the residents in the cities or in the complexes. Education is very important. Protect and retain the trees and create habitats and urban forests. So eco-habitats are very important. It can be both through having water body, plus looking at the what is native, that has to be incorporated so that we can maintain some of the species which are there. For example, in Nagpur, we know that there used to be a lot of mongoose. There's a lot of snakes. Mongoose used to be the natural. So can we preserve those corridors through plant hedges so that mongoose finds a natural corridor for traveling, and so on. So these are some little thoughts that we've started putting in, and also guided by the biodiversity studies that we undertake for when we take up our project. So what is your nature resolution? And this is primarily used to link it back to the employee, so that employees also start feeling. And these employees are the ones who are the project managers, the site engineers. They also start developing a correlation to the nature. So bringing that connect back is very important. Next slide, please. So as a part of the group, we also developed the sustainability app, and wherein you can log in and see what are the different measures that you can undertake. And this is available to all Mahindra and Mahindra employees. So all the group sector companies access the sustainability app. This is also a treasure house of information on variety of items: water, waste, biodiversity, and so on. Next. And these are some of the initiatives, and I'm going to just talk about it. Everything that we do comes under this initiative called Green Army. And why Green Army? Green Army is because of protecting. What does Army do? Army protects. And what are you supposed to do? You have to protect the green. So therefore, I'm Green Army. So all activities that we do, not only for just biodiversity, but whether it's energy, waste, water, comes under I'm Green Army. So people start identifying. And some of the few slides that we have is basically talking about the employee engagement. We also go back to the families. So that awareness piece has to go to employees, families of the employees, as well as customers and their families. So a few slides on that. We can just go through it very quickly. So this was just for the World Environment Day. Next slide. Best out of waste. Next slide. Yeah, next. And these are some of the tree plantation activities at each of our locations. Next. So what is the role of the urban environment in enhancing the agro-biodiversity of India? So what steps we need to take? It is very difficult for a normal person to relate to biodiversity in the first place and then agro-biodiversity, because many of the knowledge, like the earlier speakers have said, are lost. We remember a few things, what our grandmother used to cook, what our grandfather ate. These are all stories that we heard. And many of the things, many people have moved from places to settle in cosmopolitan areas such as Pune, Bangalore, Mumbai, and so on. So we have actually come a long way from our roots. And that is actually making it difficult to even have a conversation around biodiversity. It becomes very difficult to ask people, and relate to biodiversity. They really don't understand. And the children, our children, have even more difficulty in understanding biodiversity. So what to talk about agrobiodiversity? So how can we get it back into the conversation? So next. So of course, there is a huge linkage of biodiversity and human health. So whether it is all the services that I spoke about, it is also how our ecosystem works. And it is linked to all the medicinal and the health aspects. So if we really were to know what we eat, we would be healthy. We wouldn't need medicines. And therefore, if this knowledge is lost, and this knowledge is being lost because we have a variety of interventions that we are undertaking now in our modern lives, that is leading to a loss of knowledge, leading to a loss of health. So we do have health outcomes that could lead to that is intrinsically linked to our knowledge of our nature, that is biodiversity. So next. So it can be as simple as trying to understand, okay, the people and what do we eat. Okay, we all know that a diverse food plate is very important to good health, but what are we eating at this point of time? What is on our table? And how do we even cook? So the knowledge of incorporating agrobiology starts from the home, and that knowledge is not there at this point of time. It is lost because some people remember it, some people don't actually. So we have taken up to cosmopolitan eating habits, global eating habits, and therefore what ends up on our dinner plate or our lunch plate is definitely not local, definitely not indigenous, but something that is available. So what is available? And how can we ensure that what ends in our food plate is local, is indigenous, is linked to our culture? So we are overwhelmed with three things actually: a lack of time, what is readily available, and our global culture. So this is one of the biggest impediment of understanding of agrobiodiversity in the urban environment. If we try and explain to a normal citizen that we have to eat diverse things, they will ask you where it is found, what is to be eaten, because that knowledge is totally eroded in cosmopolitan areas. So this thirst of knowledge has to be awakened. And how do we do that? We can do it through a variety of means. First is probably cultural, indigenous, and local. Next slide, please. So also a few aspects around, the food, roti, kapda, makan. And the makan is what we are developing, but the customers who come to stay definitely are governed by climate and seasons. And this is gajar ka halwa, of course. It is eaten in winters, but nowadays we find gajar throughout the year. And it's the orange ones that we find. But what is the indigenous one, which is found mostly in the north, is the pink one, which has got higher nutritional value. And people really don't understand that what is indigenous and local probably has a higher nutritional value. Okay, so that knowledge has to be brought back. So we need to increase that agrobiodiversity in urban living, maybe going back to our culture, and also probably having rooftop gardens, vertical gardens, incorporating the citizens and the customers into, and their families and the children. So next slide. So there are specific plant species that can be incorporated in most projects, and I don't see many guidelines which talk about. Of course, there are guidelines around landscape in NBC, but are they indigenous, native? Yes, there are. But do people know about them? Probably no. So there are. We know about this moringa tree. There is aprajita. Very good tea can be made out of it, and the other leaf that it's very common in Maharashtra, where a lot of food items are made from that leaf on the right. So some of these are known, some of these are not known. So how do we incorporate it in our food at the individual level? So next. So also what we need to understand is our relationship to the food and where it is coming from. So if we look at it, this slide probably relates to the modern citizen. How far is your food traveling? And once you start understanding that, the lesser the food miles associated, the lesser is the carbon emission associated with that food. And that is better for you, healthier for you, and better for the planet. So citizens probably relate to this more nowadays, but they need to be made more aware that, how much your food is traveling. And the convenience of getting the food right at the click of a button is taking us away from, understanding actually where the food is coming from. Next. So during the lockdown, what we realized, especially in my housing society, a lot of farmers came in and they started actually the middleman connect was totally no demand. There was no big market. The local shops were also closed. So some of the farmers were delivering directly, and that is what we need to do. So how can townships integrate with the local community so that we become the customer and it is delivered directly, fresh, and organic, and we support them. So if we try and understand this relationship with this farmer, this reality can be solidified even further. So next. So it's important, therefore, to have few things for most urban spaces is to have that garden space. And in that garden space, it's important to include fruit and vegetable gardens, involve children and the residents in this experience, and have compost. Ensure that we don't use pesticides and fertilizers. Plant indigenous seeds and propagate and exchange. And that exchanging is very important. It creates that sense of community. Also to develop that relationship with farms and the farmers, and involve our children. That connect with rural and tribal is important. We need to also look at how we can forage, exchange, and cook. So there is also a concept of wild greens that can bring in a lot of nutritive value onto our plates. So, but not everybody is interested. Not everybody understands that whatever we are eating currently is not providing the kind of nutrition that we should be having. So these are just a few concepts that are presented in a very simplified manner that can actually help removing some of the hurdles of understanding what is agrobiodiversity more in the urban context, and how the urban customer is key to the entire story, because the urban customer is actually the ones who is actually spending a lot of money to try and eat healthy and so on. So if we are able to make this connect and simplify what needs to be done, probably we can have a community, inclusive community, where the farmer is able to then supply directly to variety of customers the kind of food and nutrition and the medicinal aspects of all of that. But knowledge is key to all of this. So these are a few thoughts that I thought I would want to share, and we are trying to do that in Mahindra Life Spaces by giving garden space, allowing for experiences for our customers, uh, and also in the larger spaces that we have. So many of our CSR projects focus on developing green. So Mahindra and Mahindra is known for a project called Haryali. And we ourselves in Mahindra World City have developed in conjunction with Times of India and Hero Motorcorp, urban forest, where several trees were planted, several lakh trees were planted every year, so as to create a deep, dense forest which comprises of native species. Next. So that's about it. The new normal has to be green, and we have to simplify the language so that we are able to reach out and achieve the wealth of access to the wealth of agrobiodiversity that we have in our country for our citizens.
Thank you, Sunita. It was again another good talk. You have narrated the practical examples in bringing biodiversity in the urban landscapes. It was really good. So now we have completed all the talks. So before we go to the conclusion, I would like to request Dr. Dr. Rana. So, sir, are you there? Because we unmuted your mic, Dr. Rana.
No, he is very much there.
I saw him. If he is there, he can.
He has to unmute his mic. He is trying. Yes, now he has.
Sir, please share your thoughts on this. You have listened all the 5 speakers, because if I recall, under your chairmanship, our NBA, we discussed a lot on mainstreaming agrobiodiversity in the agricultural sector and all the developmental sector, I would say. So after listening these speakers, what is your suggestion to the go forward?
He has to unmute himself. Sir, you have to unmute yourself, sir. Yeah, now you are audible, sir. Yes.
If we want to make a real headway for conservation and sustainable use of agrobiodiversity, then we have to really empower the local community. It was pointed out by Dr. Murali as well as Dr. Ajay Parida, but I recall that CBD asked for its first national report in 1997, and the item was set on Article 6, General Measures for Conservation and Sustainable Use. There was a small JEF grant, I recall, and the ministry has commissioned it to the MSSRF. I was very happy to be a member of that team, and the conclusion was that we have to empower the local communities if the conservation is to really make any progress. Ministry didn't do much follow-up on this by way of projects, specific projects, but the MSSRF went ahead by way of involving with the coastal fisher women folk, the Koli Hills. Dr. Anil Kumar, you had done that in Kerala and also in Odisha, in Jaipur tract. Many of these contributions were recognized by the Equator Prize Award. And last year, a woman from these awardees was also made a member of the Odisha State Planning Board. But what I'm conveying is, the first point is that we have to empower these people if the conservation is to go really further. The second point is, there is a gap between policy, action plan, and real work at the grassroots level. There is need to set up an effective coordination mechanism. There is coordination mechanism in place, but not effective really. We need an effective coordination mechanism between Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. Thank you. I think these 2 points I wanted to bring to your attention.
Thank you so much, sir. Very, very valid points. Now I will turn to Dr. Meiti. Are you there, Subradho Meiti? I saw him there. If he is not there, sir.
He's there. He's there.
He's there. Okay.
He's
Okay.
there.
Meiti,
Yeah,
quickly, some points.
No, you have to unmute yourself, Dr. Meiti, please.
Hello, Meiti sir. Good evening.
You can see the symbol there on the left side of your screen.
Yes,
Yes,
he is.
Actually, that I have listened all the learned speaker. So for the last speaker, I want to have a comment because they were looking for the city which will provide the biodiversity. In that case, that they have to have a very meticulous planning that how many people will be there, what will be their requirement, and requirement wise they have to plan so that their forest nearby or a cultivated area nearby can be developed where the requirement, at least a minimum requirement can be, especially the primary health care, because I always under these situations, as you know, that whoever is, people have started learning what is immunity. Everybody is talking about the immunity. And as you know that our medicinal plants have a vast scope for developing immunity. And earlier, if you see that in many places like Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, I know that when the change of the season used to be there used to be that 14 different leafy vegetables, 7 leafy vegetables they used to incorporate in their diet so that immunity can be built up and the season change effect can be nullified. So similar things they can put into, but for that they have to have a meticulous second thing that what I would always look into, that we know that what is to be done, but question is always coming forth before all of us, the how to do it. And that is the problem where the cracks are not able to, because one hand we are talking about because this biodiversity maintained by the people, those because they have a subsistence farming, and the biodiversity is dwindling where, because where there is a commercialization is there. So this balancing has to be done, because until unless those who are, sir has lastly talked that the community has to be involved. If community has to be involved, that they have to be involved in such a way that their income is not only because of maintaining the biodiversity, they lose money, because other fellows, those who are nearby, when they go for a commercial cultivation of anything, they earn more. And since because I am for the biodiversity, I should not earn less. So this kind of balancing has to be done. I think that we have to look into, and it was my pleasure to work at the chairmanship of Dr. Rana in the last NBA, and I am also learning in the process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Subradho. So we have some questions as well to the panel. In the interest of time, I am not going to put all the questions here, but one particular question I want the panel to answer. One of the participants, she asked how or whether the pockets of agrobiodiversity richness in the country can be actually commercialized for the benefit of the community and the ecology of that area. So this is a broad question. Some of the speakers, already answered there. But if you want to add on there any points, including Dr. Rana and Meiti, you are open to answer this.
Right way, I won't be able to follow, I think, that add anything extra, but I will think over it and send you a mail.
Okay, please. Anybody else? Yeah.
Can I?
Yeah, Dr. Rana. Rana.
Yes. I think if we follow the National Biodiversity Awards, and these people who have really made use of their biodiversity around them, and they come out successfully for their commercial utilization. I think over the years we have been several examples. I think we should make them known really. These people who have made success by working out from their own resources and traditional knowledge associated with the bioresources. They are ample examples for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I conclude, our NBA chairman is there, and our executive director, Dr. Mathur, is there. What are the points which MSSRF and NBA want to pick up together? So the first is to bring out the next part of the proceedings which we have already initiated by taking into consideration of all these major points and major recommendations. And this document, we want to bring it as a kind of a policy advocacy document. So the draft will be circulated to all of you. You can fine tune it. So that will be the first follow-up step which we are trying to do. Secondly, as a follow-up of this series, this webinar, we initially thought of having a series. Now we started with this kind of, the overarching one, but we would like to go ahead with some specific action area themes. For example, the sustainable agriculture alone. How do we bring the agrobiodiversity into sustainable agriculture? Because when I listened to Sunil, he mentioned about the 480 million USD worth business in sustainable agriculture. And India had a sustainable agriculture mission. And the whole Indian, when you listen to the Prime Minister, we are always talking about sustainable agriculture. But as we felt here, still we are discussing. How do we find the practical ways? For example, the Mahindra team, Dr. Sunita Purushottam talk about some practical actions. So how do we bring such kind of practical actions on a scale for the agrobiodiversity management, which we will be setting up? Thirdly, in the conservation aspect, I would like to recall our recommendation of the biodiversity heritage sites, where the agrobiodiversity, that biodiversity heritage sites, I would say we need heritage villages, biodiverse or bio villages, particularly at this point of time when we celebrate Mahatma Gandhi's 151st birth anniversary. Why don't we think about declaring biodiverse villages, looking into, every district has got such a kind of a village, I would say, in India. And then, the management plan, the proper management plan, which we can bring in to manage the conservation aspect, the sustainable use aspects, and the benefit sharing aspects. So this, on the conservation line, which I would like to recommend before NBA, because NBA has got that power to do. Lastly, the point on the empowerment, which your point, Sir Dr. Rana, the local community empowerment. I would say the biodiversity management committees, if you look at, on paper, we have hundreds of biodiversity management committees in this country, on paper. But really, the law, the Biodiversity Act entitles many power for the management committees. But how do we really build the capacity of the biodiversity management committee? So this should be the major kind of action which should emanate from this seminar, for which definitely NBA and MSSRF will be citing some examples, but those examples we should be able to replicate. So before I close, I request Dr. Mathur to come again and say a few concluding remarks, and finally Dr. Murali. And I also take this opportunity to thank all the speakers. See, all the speakers spoke really well, really well. So we will be coming back to you again with the draft. So thanks again, requesting Mathur and Dr. Murali to conclude this session. Thank you very much. Over to Dr. Mathur, sir. You unmute your mic. Yeah, it is clear.
Thank you very much. I would begin by saying it has been a real pleasure to listen to all our resource person and especially our colleague from Mahindra's. It has been a real eye-opener for me, I would say, the way she has explained that what a company can do on its own. And I must say that during this pandemic lockdown, when all of us were holed up in our homes, we also realized this phenomena. I now live in Chennai after living in Dehradun for 35 years. I am living in a housing society over here. And we could realize that a large number of local farmers were approaching our society and coming to sell the farm produce. Initially, everybody was a little hesitant, but in a few days' time, everybody understood that their product had value. It had the organic label also on that. And in terms of pricing, I won't know whether it was more or less, but there was a huge amount of excitement and acceptability. So when we now look at different models of agrobiodiversity coming up, surely for a country like India, there would be several, but in small little ways, we can encourage the local produce. We can create some local market for that. So instead of people rushing to supermarkets, they can also get benefit from that. And what it is going to do is to give a kind of a respectability first and an acceptability that these things which have grown locally have markets over there. So that is what the take-home message for me is. Although as National Biodiversity Authority, we are supposed to do many things, but I feel that we should bring it or begin small. We can develop incrementally. And my first experience with working with the MSSR Foundation has been great. And I'm very sure that together we can join forces and see to it that in this particular area of agrobiodiversity where while the law has a support for NBA, the experience lies with the foundation. And together we can unlock the resource persons and the resources. And I can assure you that as we develop the proceedings of this small effort, we should be looking at some more practical ways in which we can really promote agrobiodiversity as a kind of a business initiative in our towns and cities. So thank you once again for providing this opportunity. And I look for more partnerships with the foundation and the resource persons that I have come to know today, and I've seen them all in the last 2 hours. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Murali?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Mathur. It's quite encouraging that you have been supporting on the kind words, and it really, heartening to engage with you in future, and I will come and meet with you sometimes soon, so that we can engage on a larger partnerships with you, which is good for both of us. And the program today itself is an eye-opener for me, particularly because the plethora of options open for us, not only in terms of highly technological, as IVPGR talked about, but also in terms of how various mechanisms can be brought into the farmers at the field, and of course how private players who are not necessarily involved directly with the farmers can also bring in a lot of, like Mahindra that we did today, they can also bring in quite a bit of, agrobiodiversity conservation aspects into the, in the milieu of people. That's quite understandable. As Anil said, we might mark, some initiatives to bring in some villages that are, anyway, the MSSRF already has this bio villages. This could be one initiative where we can start as agro-biodiversity villages, which we can think of. Maybe we can start with Wayanad itself, perhaps, and Kolli Hills itself could be one such initiatives that we can kickstart. Of course, when I recently, 2 days ago or 3 days ago, when I went to Pondicherry, that is something which can have a can be one such initiative that I can immediately start. I also had a discussion with the Chief Minister of Pondicherry, who was quite encouraging to start with nutrition secure Pondicherry. I think we can start off there immediately as a part of this program. I mean, notionally, of course, we can start this program, and perhaps we can start elsewhere too, such as Kolli Hills and Wayanad Hills, where we can reach quickly and we have our facilities. So this is something which we can do within our limits. And as we progress with NBA, I think we can do more as part of the program with as jointly as possible. Well, thank you very much, and it's quite a revealing experience for me from various expertise that you have shown us today. And thanks so much. And it's
thank you,
rich
Dr. Murali. Over
experience.
to Thompson to say a vote of thanks and close the proceedings.
Sure. I take this opportunity to thank Dr. V.V. Mathur. When we approached him along with Dr. Anil Kumar, he really accepted our idea and give this platform to invite experts on agrobiodiversity and make this happen. He's a very positive thinking person. I really would like to thank Dr. Mathur, then Secretary and Dr. Murali, MS Swaminathan Foundation, Dr. Ishwar Pujar from UNDP, and Mohini Tahul. They work from the background. Really helped us to make this happen. I'd like to thank also the MBA staff and all the speakers specifically for their effort, and they have really worked hard for the preparation of PPT, and I was behind them in getting all those PPTs. So I would like to thank the speakers and all the participants. We have received a lot of comments and we have received a lot of questions. Definitely we will reply to all the questions. Since we don't have time to answer those, we could not answer those questions. Definitely we will come back to you. With this, I would like to thank once again all the speakers and the participants. Thank you very much. Also, the IT person from MS Swaminathan Foundation.
Yeah, certainly.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Kannappan and
Kannappan.
Thank you so much. So with this, we put the curtain here, but we will come back. And thanks again to all of you and also the participants. Thank you very much. You can leave the meeting. Thank you.